Hello students, welcome to the program. In this program, we'll be talking about nature and scope of educational psychology. The objectives set for the lecture are to know about the meaning of educational psychology, to learn about the nature of educational psychology, and lastly, we'll discuss about the scope of educational psychology. Dear students, educational psychology is the branch of psychology concerned with the scientific study of human learning. Educational psychology consists of two words, psychology and education. While general psychology is a pure science, educational psychology is its application in the field of education with the aim of socializing man and modifying his behavior. It's a fairly new and growing field of study, though it can date back as early as the days of Plato and Aristotle. It was not identified as a specific practice. It was unknown that everyday teaching and learning, in which teacher has to think about individual differences, assessment, development, the nature of a subject being taught, problem solving, and transfer of learning was the beginning to the field of educational psychology. These topics are important to education, and as a result it is important to understand human cognition, learning, and social perception. Plato and Aristotle researched individual differences in the field of education, training of the body, and the cultivation of psychomotor skills, the formation of good character, the possibilities and limits of moral education. Some other educational topics they spoke about were the effect of music, poetry, and the other arts on the development of individual, role of teacher, and the relation between teacher and student. Educational psychology is the study of learner, learning, and teaching. B.F. Skinner defines educational psychology as, quote, that branch of psychology which deals with teaching and learning, unquote. In some more comprehensive way, it is the study of the ways in which the learner can most effectively be brought into successful interaction with the material to be learned, the learning situation, and the teacher who provides the learning opportunity. In psychology, the scope of study and the field of operation are extended to cover the behavior of all living organisms related to all their life activities. Whereas in educational psychology, the scope of such behavioral study has to be limited within the confines of teaching learning process. That is, studying the behavior of the learner in relation to educational environment, specifically for the satisfaction of their educational needs and the all-round development of their personality. So dear students, the central theme of educational psychology is psychology of learning. Today, educational psychology is a vital discipline that is contributing to the education of teachers and learners. For example, Jerome Bruner, an enduring figure in educational psychology, recently noted the need to rethink our idea of development, teaching, and learning, and the interaction among them. Specifically, Bruner in 1996 urged educators and psychologists to see children as thinkers and stated, quote, no less than the adult, the child is thought of as holding more or less coherent theories, not only about the world, but about her own mind and how it works. These naive theories are brought into congruence with those of parents and teachers, not through imitation, not through didactic instructions, but by discourse, collaboration, and negotiation. This model of education is more concerned with interpretation and understanding than with the achievement of factual knowledge or skilled performance." Unquote. Educational psychology has been built upon theories of operant conditioning, functionalism, structuralism, constructivism, humanistic psychology, Gestalt psychology, and information processing. Educational psychology is the study of how humans learn in educational setting, the effectiveness of educational interventions, the psychology of teaching, and the social psychology of schools as organizations. The works of child psychologists such as Lev Vygotsky, Jean Piaget, Bernard Luskin, and Jerome Bruner has been influential in creating teaching methods and educational practices. Educational psychology has seen rapid growth and development as a profession in the last 20 years. School psychology began with the concept of intelligence testing, leading to provisions for special education students whom could not follow the regular classroom curriculum in the early part of the 20th century. School psychology combines principles from educational psychology and clinical psychology to understand and treat students with learning disabilities, to foster the intellectual growth of gifted students, to facilitate pro-social behaviors in adolescents, and otherwise to promote safe, supportive, and effective learning environments. Educational psychologists are working side by side with psychiatrists, social workers, teachers, speech and language therapists, and counselors in attempt to understand the questions being raised when combining behavioral, cognitive, and social psychology in the classroom setting. The study of educational psychology has brought about change in the approach, and therefore we have child-centered education. Psychological principles are used in formulation of curriculum for different stages. Attempts are made to provide subjects and activities in the curriculum which are in conformity with the needs of the student, their developmental characteristics, learning patterns, and also needs of the society. Now, dear students, let us have an understanding about the nature of educational psychology. It has been accepted that educational psychology is a science of education. Hence, we can say that its nature is scientific. We can summarize the nature of educational psychology in different ways as: number one, educational psychology is a science. Any branch of study concerned with observation of facts and establishment of verifiable general laws is termed as science. It employs certain objective methods for the collection of data and has its objectives of understanding, explaining, predicting, and control of facts. Educational psychology has also developed objective methods of collection of data and aims at understanding, predicting, and controlling behavior. So, it is the scientific study of human behavior in educational situation. Number second, educational psychology is a natural science. An educational psychologist conducts his investigations, gathers his data, and reaches his conclusions in exactly the same manner as physicist or the biologist. However, educational psychology is not as exact as natural sciences, since the human behavior can't be predicted exactly because it's dynamic. Number third is that educational psychology is a social science. Educational psychology draws heavily from various branches of psychology, biology, sociology, and anthropology. Like the sociologists, anthropologists, economists, or political scientists, the educational psychologist studies human beings and their sociability. Number 4 is that educational psychology is a positive science. A positive science deals with facts as they are or as they operate, while as a normative science is concerned with what ought to be. Educational psychology studies the child's behavior as it is, not as it ought to be. So, it's a positive science. Number 5 is that educational psychology is an applied science. Educational psychology draws heavily facts from the areas as developmental psychology, clinical psychology, abnormal psychology, and social psychology. It is the application of these principles in the field of education. By applying the principles and the techniques of psychology, it tries to study the behavior and experiences of pupil. As a branch of psychology, it's a parallel to any other applied science. Number 6, educational psychology is a developing or growing science. It is concerned with new and ever new research. As research findings accumulate, educational psychologists get better insight into the child's nature and behavior. Now, dear students, we'll have a look over scope of educational psychology. Educational psychology is important in teaching learning process because it helps in understanding how learning process can be effectively guided by taking into account the special circumstances of the student setting. It also determines how teaching can be made more effective, how educational goals can be made more meaningful, and how desirable educational goals can be achieved. The scope of educational psychology is ever growing due to constant research in this field. The 5 major areas covered by educational psychology which indicate its scope are: number 1, the learner. The subject matter of educational psychology is knitted around the learner. Educational psychology acquaints us with need of knowing the leaves and deals with the techniques of knowing him well. The topics thus included are the innate abilities and capabilities of the learner, individual differences and their measurements, the overt and the covert, the conscious and the unconscious behavior of the learner, the characteristics of his growth and development, and each stage beginning from childhood to adulthood. Factors considered when a teacher focuses on learner includes family background, prior knowledge, motivation, developmental level, interests and attitude. All these factors influence how learners acquire knowledge. So, before the learner is taught, his individuality and personality should be known. The second one is the teacher. Teacher's role is very crucial in the task of behavioral modification and personality development of the children studying in a class. Much depends on the competency and capability of the teacher for carrying out the desired task. A teacher must know the growth and development of the child and his requirements at different levels. Educational psychology helps the teacher to study the ability, interest, intelligence, needs, and adopts different techniques of teaching for effective communication. The utility of educational psychology for the teachers has been emphasized in both theory and practices of teaching and learning. Educational psychology serves as a foundation discipline in education in the same way that physical science serves engineering, says Gage and Berliner in 1999. The teacher is a potent force in any scheme of teaching learning process. Educational psychology emphasizes the need of knowing the self for a teacher to play his role properly in the process of education. It emphasizes the need of knowing thyself for a teacher. It throws light on the essential personality traits, interests, aptitudes, the characteristics of effective teaching, etc., so as to inspire him or her for becoming a successful teacher by giving insight in their own personality and thereby making them able to handle their stress, conflict, and anxiety. Third one is the learning experiences. Educational psychology helps in deciding what learning experiences are desirable at what stage of growth and development of the learner, so that these experiences can be acquired with a greater ease and satisfaction. It also helps in deciding what learning situation should be provided by teacher to learner according to his mental and physical age, his previous knowledge and interest level. By describing the learner's characteristics, what teaching aids are appropriate for the particular subject. Number fourth is learning process. After knowing the learner and deciding what learning experiences are to be provided, the emerging problem is to help learner in acquiring these learning experiences with ease and confidence. Hence, educational psychology deals with the nature of learning and how it takes place. It moves on to the laws, principles, and theories of learning. Other items in the learning process are remembering, forgetting, perceiving, concept formation, thinking and reasoning, problem solving, transfer of learning, ways and means of effective learning, etc. Fifth one is the teaching learning situation or environment. Every environmental situation is not suitable for a particular piece of instruction or the sharing of a learning experience. The effectiveness of a teaching learning program depends largely on the suitability of teaching learning situation in terms of time, place, and other environmental factors. Educational psychology helps in taking into account the classroom climate, institutional or organizational climate, group behavior and group dynamics, role of reward and punishment, and lastly the guidance and counseling. Though the entire scope of educational psychology is included in these already mentioned 5 key factors, it may be further expanded by adding some more, like first, human behavior, as educational psychology studies human behavior in educational situations. Second, growth and development of a child at each stage. Third, heredity and environment, as they contribute towards the growth of the individual and how this knowledge can be made use of for bringing about the optimum development of the child. Fourth, personality of an individual and its development. Fifth one, individual differences as one of the fundamental facts of human nature. Sixth, intelligence, its nature and measurement. Seventh, evaluation of learning performance and suggesting various tools and techniques for assessment and evaluation such as performance tests, oral tests and written tests. And lastly, guidance and counseling of the growing child, the learner, so that he can overcome the difficulties of poor performance, backwardness in any aspect of development, maladjustment, study habit, examination techniques, or in learning styles. Dear students, we can conclude that educational psychology is concerned with the application of theories, principles, and techniques of psychology in the field of education. It's a science of education dealing primarily with how, when, and what of education. It's not concerned with why of education. It gives the necessary knowledge and skills for providing education to the pupil in a satisfactory way. It's concerned with learning situation and process by which learning can be more efficient and effective. Educational psychology is narrower in scope than general psychology. While general psychology deals with the behavior of individual in a general way, educational psychology is concerned with the behavior of a learner in an educational setting. Dear students, I hope you have understood this content and enjoyed the program. Thanks for watching.